Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of All Skins Considered. I'm Dr. Evan Reider, board certified psychiatrist and dermatologist. Excited to be with you guys tonight to talk about a very important topic, and that is sunscreens, and we're going to give it to you without any BS, okay? So I've gotten a lot of questions that have been rolling in, and I have a special guest who's going to be joining me tonight, and that's going to be Dr. Gendler, who's one of the OGs, as I say, of dermatology, and she is an expert in cosmetic dermatology, medical dermatology, and an international expert in sunscreens. And here she is to straight shoot with us. Okay.
Hi.
Let's bring your camera up a little bit. There we go. Looking
Easy.
good. Okay, cool. So
Okay.
joining me, Dr. Gendler. So I thought that you'd be the perfect person, and I think to talk about sunscreens, since you have so much experience, obviously in dermatology, but talking about sunscreens in particular. So this is going to be no BS, as I was saying before you logged in. So when you want an answer and you don't want people to give you the skinny and you don't want people to sugarcoat things, you want the truth, Dr. Gendler is who you want to be talking to. Okay.
Ouch.
And that's a compliment. That's a compliment.
Okay.
No BS. Where do I get into the facts? Because I think that there's so much misinformation about sunscreen out there. And I think it's a really important topic, because I think that there's been a gradual devaluation of what it means to be a doctor and what it means to be a dermatologist. So there's lots of people giving advice on sunscreens, and there's people that are my age and younger and with less experience, and people who didn't even go to medical school of dermatology giving advice. So I wanted to get your opinion on some of
I did. I actually did go. It was a long time ago, but I did go. Anyway,
Okay.
my pet peeve is that it's shocking to me how little the consumers and dermatologists know about sunscreens, or at least how little they recommend correctly to patients. And that's why I think it's a really good topic for us to talk about.
Cool. Can we just dive right into that?
Sure. Why not?
Okay. So let's talk about first. I'm going to be referring to my little outline because I want to make sure that we give people a lot of actionable items of information.
Okay.
So let's just talk about chemical sunscreens versus physical sunscreens. What's the difference? How do you know what you're dealing with?
Well, the difference between chemical and physical is that one is an actual block against the sun. It literally forms a shield in front of your face, or your body. And the other is a chemical that absorbs the sunlight. And so they protect in different ways, though they both do a reasonable job. They shield against different wavelengths of light, and that's what's most important.
So, so what I typically tell people is if you can read the ingredients on the back of the sunscreen and they don't sound like gibberish, you're probably dealing with a mineral sunscreen, not a chemical sunscreen. And the two mineral sunscreens we have on the market here in the States are zinc oxide and titanium dioxide. And the ones that if you look on the back of the ingredient list, and most of us don't do that much when we're looking at sunscreens, but we're going to talk to you about why it's important to do that. If you can't pronounce the names, or if it's
it's good. Can't pronounce it, it's good. No.
Right. Yeah, if you can't pronounce it, you're probably dealing with a chemical sunscreen.
You are, right. Well, sometimes there are physical blocks in addition. But you know what, Evan, I think the most important thing to realize is that our patients are fooled by the nomenclature SPF. And I think that's probably where we should start. So if you don't mind, I'll just explain very briefly that when you see SPF, that's what we're classically trained to look for, right? SPF 15 or 30 or 50. You have to understand that that applies to only one wavelength of light, and that's ultraviolet B. And this goes back to so many years ago when they started to classify sunscreens. So for all of you who are listening, there's a lot of different types of ultraviolet light. Some are better and some are worse than others. So the deepest penetrating light is ultraviolet A, and that causes tanning and causes much of the sun damage that we associate with aging and with not nice skin and skin cancer, etc. Ultraviolet B is the sunburn ray, and that is what most of the American sunscreens shield you against, and that's what SPF stands for. So when you see a high SPF, that doesn't mean that it's going to necessarily shield you against the bad UVA rays. And that's the most important thing, and why the United States is so behind Europe and Asia in this is just beyond me. I understand why, but it's not fair and it's wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I really appreciate what our FDA does in terms of they often what happens is medications get tested in other markets, and like, I hate to put it this way, but people in other countries end up being the guinea pigs for the United States customers because they're getting the medications before they come to the United States markets, that we're seeing all the side effects, like the cosmetic fillers that we talked about. And that's the reason why I don't start with the new fillers, because we sort of see what happens like in Dubai and Latin America and Europe to see what's
today, what just happened with that horrible filler complication in Asia. But that's the issue. In the United States, the FDA treats sunscreens as drugs, and in Europe and Asia, they're considered cosmetics, and therein lies the rub. So it's really great that the FDA does this because they look for safety profiles, but we have the benefit of the European and Asian experience for the last 20 years. And you see that actually most of the European ingredients that are better UVA blocks than anything we have, which we can talk about in a minute, they're very safe. They're safer than the ones we have. And so that's what's really confounding. And in the olden days, you know, I used to have to sneak European sunscreens into the office, but now anyone can go online and get good sunscreens. And I think that until the American consumers start to pressure the manufacturers to make this happen, then it's not going to happen so quickly. Though the FDA is looking at it now in the new 2019 rulings, they're actually going to look at one of the ingredients that we might talk about today. And that's finally, after how many years is this going to be, that we'll finally accept that there are other ingredients that are better than what we have?
Yeah, I was worried that that was going to be sidelined because of COVID, but it sounds like that it's still going to be happening. That
probably, maybe. I mean, it will be. It may be a little bit delayed, but you know.
Yeah, so we'll see.
But it should happen.
Let's talk about it. So when we're talking about when you're looking for a sunscreen, let's say you're in the United States market. Before we get to talking about those great ingredients that you can't get in the United States market, when you're looking for a sunscreen, you're obviously looking for high SPF, which again blocks UVB, okay, which is the rays that burn people. But you can go you can go in the sun, not get burned, but still get all that ultraviolet light A.
And you see that all the time, right? How often do you have a patient who comes in, they're very tan, and you say, you're so tan. They go, well, I was wearing an SPF 50, and then you have to go through this. So that's really important for patients, consumers to understand. SPF is almost irrelevant in terms of your sun damage. You will not get sunburn, and most of the time you don't see people sunburning unless they missed a spot. You know, you see a hand print here. But most people, when they put on the crappy American sunscreens, they don't burn, but they can, and that's where the problem is.
Yeah. And so there's that, and then there's the fact that UVA light causes skin cancer. And UVA, even if people don't care as much about skin cancer, for people who care about what they look like, UVA penetrates deep into the dermis and denatures the collagen. So if you care about what you look like, you want to be blocking the UVA as well.
You do.
So,
So interestingly, somebody just asked a question about what about the PA rating. So let me just summarize that for you. So SPF is the United States rating for UVB protection. That's really nice. Great. But that doesn't even matter to me most of the time, because virtually all of our sunscreens protect you against UVA or UVB, or why else would they be on the market? But you need UVA protection. So we have a really low threshold in the United States for what's classified as broad spectrum. And in the US, the only chemical sunscreen ingredient approved is called avobenzone. That also has a very, very long name. It's butyl methoxydibenzoyl methane. And that's what you'll see when you look at the ingredient list. And it actually is that ingredient that has that sunscreen smell, okay? That's what it has. But that's a lousy UVA block. It's really unstable. And in an hour, I think something like 50 to 80% of it is inactive. So they have to combine avobenzone or butyl methoxydibenzoyl methane with other stabilizers. Sometimes they use some physical blocks to join it, but the only way it can even work is by combining it. And it's not even a very, very effective ingredient. So that's what we have in the US. That's why it's important to go outside of what we have here. Okay.
Just the point I want to make, just to interrupt. You're probably the only person who knows the actual name for avobenzone, so that's been noted. Thank you for pronouncing that. I don't know it. And secondly, so if you're looking for a broad spectrum, the other thing was a question I just wanted to address as it came up. someone said that I saw an article that physical sunscreens also absorb the light and not only block it. Is this true? That actually is true.
Yeah.
Where there is data to suggest that it's not just like a physical blockade where the lights are bouncing off. There is sort of a chemical reaction happening as well.
That's right.
They're sort of moving away from the term physical.
But the reason for that is that in order for those physical blocks, and I think we're going to confuse people, but when we say physical, we mean zinc oxide and titanium dioxide. In order for those to be effective, they really need to be coated with an inert chemical substance to make them not degraded by light. And therein, that allows them to also absorb light, but they really function better as physical blockers. But somebody asked the question, it's really good. What does PA with plus signs mean?
Yep.
So in Asia and Europe, they used to have something called PPD, persistent pigment darkening reaction. That refers to UVA. So when you look at a sunscreen product, you should look for that designation. And I just happened to have brought some, I found some stuff here, so I could show you what that means. Let me see if you can see this. I don't know if you can for the light, but there's a little designation here. It says PA, and it has plus, 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 plus. There's a certain number of plus signs. The more plus signs, the better. That's ultraviolet A. So in my mind, it's easy now to go online and look for things. What are the types of brands that have these other ingredients? And in my estimation, there are 4 ingredients that should be added to any sunscreen that you really use, other than a physical sunblock, which we could talk about, zinc and titanium. Okay, and they're natural supposedly, and that's why there's a big push for those. They vary as well, but there are 4 European ingredients. One is called Mexeril SX, one is Mexeril XL, and those are commonly used. Oh, you look at you made your little cards. I made some cards too, but so those are used in La Roche-Posay products because it's a proprietary brand from L'Oreal, and they actually go by very long chemical names. They're not listed like that. They're listed on the ingredient list differently. One is drometrosol, and the other is terephthalidine dicamphorsulfonic acid.
Why don't we do one at a time? Let's talk about Mexeril.
Oh, Mexeril XL.
So this is La Roche-Posay branded. Okay, they're not telling me they're not telling me to say this, and they're not paying me to say.
No, they're definitely not, because they have been a little tricky, and they know that I feel this way. And because back in the day, there were so many good European Anthelios sunscreens that I loved since 1997. I've been advocating these. They came out with some American ones. They know how I feel about this. And they're not the same, but they came up with some clever names to kind of mimic the European names. And I don't think it's fair, because Anthelios has some excellent mineral sunscreens, but the chemical sunscreens they have still contain avobenzone, and they don't contain the good ingredients Tynosorb S, Tynosorb M, Mexeril XL, and Mexeril SX. Those are the ingredients that you want. Did you do the Mexeril? Did you did Tynosorb? Look at you.
Well. Yeah.
Now this is an interesting one.
You can also see Tynosorb. Again, we would have to be the La Roche-Posay Anthelios bought in Europe or Latin America or Asia. Okay, and there's
right.
I can't pronounce that, but that's why I wrote it. And then it's also
you can
by this name. All right.
I think it's like bis ethyl hexyl methyl. It has a lot of things, but it starts with bis.
Bis,
and that's what you should know.
Oxyphenyl, methoxyphenyl, triazine. Okay.
Right, but listen, the company that makes that is lobbying forcefully for the FDA to look at it, and they're doing safety profiles, and I believe that they will eventually approve that in the United States. And in Europe, Anthelios often has that included in its European products. So you not only get the benefit of Mexeril, but you also get the Tynosorb S in there, and those products shield against different wavelengths in UVA, so you really want both of them. Okay. And it's important, and I think that we really need to stress this with patients, because when dermatologists make their own brand of sunscreen that they get from some American company, it's not good. It's not, unless it's mineral. If it's a chemical sunscreen with avobenzone, it's not the finest product they can get, and they can go online and get it, and they should.
The third ingredient, which you can get in La Roche-Posay, I don't know if you can get it in any other brands in the States, right? It's Mexeril SX.
Right, the two kinds, right. Mm-hmm. And they shield, they're different wavelengths of UVA, but they're both really good UVA screens.
The other name you may see it by is Ecamsu or Ecamsul.
usually it's not written like that, except in chemical language, but you might see it as drometrosol. You see there are two different names. So so did you write that one? Did you make a card with that, with drometrosol?
Yeah, so there's Mexerol XL and there's
Okay.
Mexerol SX, which
Exactly.
that star means we have that in the United States market, but just not in the best formulation. But I know, and I think that it's not only La Roche-Posay that makes them in Europe, but I think a couple of the other brands, they have all three.
Well,